December 8th, 2020 to order. And it looks like Abby is going to go ahead and have the roll call again, or just say, well, okay, yeah, says. The first item is the roll call.
I have marked Brar, Murray, Paulson, Ramsey, Schaefer, and Slavish as present.
And Abby just told me to make an announcement that this is the last Plan Commission meeting of the year 2020. So there is not going to be another one on 22nd, Abby? Yes.
That's correct. That one is canceled.
That is canceled. So let's make the best of what we have, folks. So, all right. So our public hearing, the first public hearing is at 7:05. So let's go to item number 1, the Plan Commission minutes of November 24th, 2020.
Move approval.
Move. Okay,
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, the motion has been made and it has been seconded. Abby is going to record it. Any questions or comments? Any changes? Anything? Okay, otherwise, all those in favor of approving the Plan Commission minutes of November 24th, 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, the minutes are approved. So it's still 7:02. So let's go to set a public hearing date for conditional use permit for Hidden Cave Cidery, 2500 Pleasant View Road, number 102. Who doesn't want to go and taste some of these ciders? I think should be awesome. Okay, so who's going to make a motion? Well, Daphne, do you want to say something, or should we just? I'm sure that everybody had read this, looked at even all this. Oh yeah, look at this cider tasting room there and the cider production there.
Yeah,
Daphne,
so
you want to go ahead?
sure, I
Daphne,
can say a
you
little
did a lot of
bit.
work.
Yeah, so they just need a conditional use permit because of this tasting room right here. And basically any retail services are considered ancillary and therefore need a conditional use in industrial areas.
Okay, Ramsey will move that we set a public hearing for Tuesday, January 12th at 7:05 p.m.
Okay, I will go ahead and second it. Okay, motion by Elder Ramsey, and I second it. Any questions or comments now? January 12th at 7:05 p.m. Okay, if there are not any questions or comments, all those in favor of setting a public hearing for January 12th at 7:05 p.m. for conditional use permit for Hidden Cave Cidery at 2500 Pleasant View Road, number 102, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, motion passed unanimously. It's still 7:04, and let's go to the item number 2. Again, it's only set a public hearing date for sign variance for Adams Outdoor Advertising parcel 255-0708-0234537-2 is the Airport Road Business Park and the first edition.
Mayor?
Daphne, yes.
This is Jen. I'm going to recuse myself from this item.
Oh, you are? All
Yes,
right.
sir, based on my my employment with the Wisconsin DOT. Thank you.
Okay, it's very close to that Highway 1218. So, Daphne, do you want to enlighten us?
Sure, Mayor. So this is a sign. It's going in the parcel north of the Spectrum building. So it's in between, I believe the other road is, so it's in between Highway 12 and I think Nursery Drive is the other road. And then down here to the south is that Spectrum building. And so they're just requesting a sign variance because we do have those off-premises signs are considered prohibited signs, so therefore they need a sign variance in order to put something up there.
Okay,
And
so
we
I know,
didn't prepare a staff report for this item. We
Mm.
will for January 12th. The recommendation tonight is just to set the public hearing.
okay. Need a motion to set a public hearing also for January 12th at 7:15 PM.
I'll
This is
move.
Slavish. Yeah, I'll second it then. Slavish, second.
Okay, motion by John and second by Mike Slavish. Any questions or comments? I see that there are some section 2212 and the other section 082s which are quoted here, but that we will deal with at the public hearing. Any questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to set a public hearing for Tuesday, January 12th at 7:15 PM for Adams Outdoor Advertising Parcel on the Airport Road Business Park, first edition. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. Okay, it's 7:07. So I'm going to open the public hearing for general implementation plan amendment for Tribeca Village on Tribeca Drive. Anybody who wants to speak either in favor or against it? Abby, are there any hands raised?
I do not see any hands raised.
Wow, we don't even have Terrence Wall or his group.
I guess it would probably be a good idea to mention some of Terrence's comments here during this public hearing.
I think that actually would be, actually that should be done. Yes, you got quite a few emails from him. Go ahead and mention it. Well, why don't you go over it? So,
So Terrence emailed the Plan Commission a couple of times. He also contacted the Common Council, and I spoke with him by phone and also with other people within his office. I guess his primary concerns were about feeling like the developer who was applying for the rezoning request did not share plans or information in advance. He is opposed to adding a fourth floor on one of the buildings, which is the primary reason for the rezoning request. And he's opposed to that. He's not opposed to additional units or additional residential square footage overall. He mentioned that he's very concerned about the road extension and wants to make sure that Tribeca Drive would be extended and improved, and utilities would be installed prior to construction of this new building. And then he also expressed concern about Canal Street and whether there would be some pressure for the future tenants of 3810. If they weren't providing adequate parking for their tenants, they may decide that they want to park on Canal, which is a private street and that's owned by Terrence. It's part of the Tribeca residences to the south. There are 3 buildings there that are owned by T-Wall, and T-Wall is also the initial developer of Tribeca Village, but no longer owns the development. He's since sold it to MIG Commercial Real Estate.
and I agree with Abby and with some of those concerns that that Canal Street is a private street and there should be, the others shouldn't be parking there, and Tribeca Drive should be completed. And yeah, so some of those concerns are valid. So, and I hope Jacob he's supposed to share his plans and things with the neighbors, right? And I hope by now he has done it.
Yeah, we provided a direct link to T-Wall. I think that there might have been some confusion within their office about whether this was a GIP or an SIP, because a lot of the questions were SIP level questions. We offered to print the documents, but we had already sent it in a link. We also, we are required to notify property owners and nearby the rezoning, and we went 250 feet. So there were 3 mailings that went to Terrence Wall's company PO box. And that was for each of the 3 separate LLCs. So according to our records, they were notified. We spoke with somebody within his office 2 weeks ago about the project. For this, our staff didn't recommend that Jacob hold a neighborhood meeting. So we would normally recommend that if we think that the changes rise to the level that there would be a significant amount of interest from neighboring properties. But in this case, there was already a GIP that was approved that allowed apartments at this location. And the change is really just to add 1 level to 1 building and then to add 2,000 square feet overall.
So one of his biggest concern is probably the 4-story. I guess he went over it. So are there some other buildings which are 4-story in that area or not? Or are there going to be?
I think most of the multifamily redevelopment projects that we've seen recently are 4-story buildings. I think that Graber View that's right across the street is 3 stories.
It's 4.
Is it 4? Thanks, Jacob. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
And there are, I mean, Tribeca overall initially was planned as a really quite dense neighborhood. So, you know, there were buildings within Tribeca that were proposed to be up to 6 stories.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think that 4
Okay.
stories, I mean, I don't feel like 4 stories is in any way out of character with the area and how we expect it to redevelop.
Okay.
Abby,
So,
is Graber View the same as the Tuca property?
Yes, and I'm sorry, it has a new name now. It's called Cardinal View. So that's gonna take me like another month to get the new name. All the projects in Middleton keep getting new names. So yeah, it's the Tuca development that's right across the street on the other side of Tribeca Drive. It's well under construction now, senior
Yeah,
housing.
That's definitely 4 stories. I remember that.
Thank you.
okay. Okay. All right. So anyway, so those were Terrence's concerns. So you have, you know, let others know that that's what he shared his concerns in emails. And anyone else besides him? I didn't see anything.
I didn't receive any other correspondence.
Okay. Okay, well, then still, yeah, if there's anyone else who want to speak either in favor or against, you still got few more seconds. Okay, if there are no one who wants to speak, I'm going to close that part of the public hearing. And then we go to item number 3. Well, let's just go through and then. Okay, so that's also set a public hearing for rezoning this 7103 Twin Sunset Road.
This is Murray. I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for rezoning for Tuesday, January 12th at 7:25 p.m.
I'll second. Paulson?
Okay, thank you. So motion by Jennifer, second by Kurt. So is there anything that you or Daphne want to say at this time, Abby?
I didn't have anything. Daphne might.
Daphne?
No, this is just the GIP for, you guys have seen this before. It's a concept review. And so this is just the GIP, just a little bit more information, and a tentative site plan for the SIP that will come later.
Okay.
Daphne,
okay.
a question that I'm sure will come up. We're just setting the public hearing now, but the question will be why they're proposing a rezoning to a GIP rather than 2 R2 zoned lots.
I believe the reasoning is because the R2 lots, I don't remember what the minimum sizes are that we have in our ordinance, but I believe the 2 lots would be too small for an R2.
Okay.
So it's
And we'll be
Okay.
sure that gets included in the staff report, Kurt.
Because I remember when we
Yeah.
first talked about this, clearly the splitting it into 2 lots seemed to be a no-brainer. I wasn't surprised to even see it come back to the commission, actually, because I thought there was enough space to just do that on his own, but obviously not.
Well, I guess if he was to build 2 single-family homes, probably not.
Yeah,
Mm.
okay.
Wouldn't have to come back, but since he's building the
For
duplexes,
twos.
so that may be the reason, so.
Got it.
Okay, so any other questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to set a public hearing for rezoning 7103 Twin Sunset Road for January 12th at 7:25 PM. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 4. So we had a public hearing and there's a recommendation for a general implementation plan amendment for Tribeca Village, Tribeca Drive. So who is going to take this one?
I'll take it. I wanted to address a couple of the points that were raised by T-Wall in his emails. The first is related to Tribeca Drive Extended. We have been working with MIG Commercial Real Estate to get their civil drawings approved for extending that road. And they expect to begin that project in the spring. We do have a city developer agreement that is in place for Tribeca Village as a whole that allowed construction of the multifamily development Cardinal View, allowed that to proceed without the road being extended. And the reason for that is that there are 2 points of ingress and egress off of Springton Drive. So they have an alternate access point. But that same city developer agreement says that Jacob's site, 3810, could get an early start permit to do footings and foundations, assuming that they get rezoning and meet all their requirements, but they cannot pull a full building permit until Tribeca Drive Extended is substantially completed. So that's one thing, I know Jacob's working on purchasing this property from MIG, and there's, going to be a lot of time involved with getting all the approvals in place, but it's important that the developers of 3810 understand that they cannot get a full building permit until Tribeca Drive is completed per our city developer agreement. Our recommendation is to recommend approval to the Common Council of the GIP rezoning contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments and an understanding that we would not allow access to this property off of Parmenter Street. And that was something that during the last GIP review that our staff recommended, and I believe at the time that JT Klein was okay with only getting access off of Tribeca Drive. So that's one thing we should discuss. And then the issue that Terrence raised in his email related to his concern about parking on Canal Street. That is a future private property matter. It's a future potential dispute between 2 private property owners, but it's possible that the city could require, as part of this GIP approval, that Jacob would include something in his lease that would notify tenants that they are not allowed to park on Canal because that's private property. I can think of a couple of instances where we have done that in order to try to avoid future potential private property disputes. We use it more commonly to try to avoid future disputes between the city and a private property owner. So for example, if an apartment building is located next to something that's noisy, we will require as part of the rezoning that they include something in their lease to let people know, you know, you're moving in right next to Capitol Brewery, for example, and they have music until 9 p.m. at night. Please note that this is allowed, and don't sign a lease at this building and then complain that it's too noisy in this area. So that is something that we could require as part of the rezoning, and it might help to assuage some of the concerns that Terrence raised.
And I think that's not a bad idea. So Jacob, do you have any questions or comments, or you're
don't.
gonna go?
I mean, I've read the very detailed covenants that were put together originally for Tribeca, which Terrence didn't sell to MIG, but the company that he was removed from as president sold to MIG. Those documents are very clear that Canal Street, at any time after a certain amount of Tribeca is built out, can be made a public road. And so I don't think that we should be have any kind of conditions in our approval related to not being able to park on what potentially, as soon as a threshold is met for building out Tribeca, is a public street.
So Abby, are you aware of that, or you're not even supposed to be aware of that?
Well, I would think that would require future action of the city to accept it as a private street. So that's the only nuance that I would add there.
So right
To
now,
accept it as a public street.
As a public street. Thank you, Dan.
So right now it is a private street.
Well, and the threshold sounds nebulous. I mean, what's the likelihood?
Yeah.
That would be a question for Sean Stowski, our
Has-
Public Works Director.
Has Canal Street even been built?
Yes.
It has, okay.
Yeah, that's basically the drive into Terrence's buildings there at Tribeca. But I mean, I think,
Off of Tribeca or off of Parmenter?
well, it'd be both.
Okay. It connects from Parmenter to Tribeca.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, if it is his street, he built it, I guess.
I'm coming, bud. Hang on.
Yeah, then unless it becomes a public street, so the others shouldn't use it without his permission, I would imagine so. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just a question for Abby. And this relates to Terrence's complaint that he wasn't notified or didn't see the plans. As I understand it, this is just a text amendment of a GIP, so it doesn't really need plans. It's basically just changing the number 4 to the number 3 to the number 4 on one of the buildings, right? And it's a GIP amendment because it's substantive enough. It's not a minor amendment.
Yep,
But
that's correct.
but all the other conditions of approval that are in the GIP are not being altered by this text amendment. So in zoning terms, it's very similar to just amending the text of an ordinance and not the map.
That's correct, Kurt. And
Right.
What's on your screen right now where it says the current zoning allows and it shows site E in the 2 buildings. Right below there is the most simple summary of what's being changed. And I sent this to T-Wall to try to explain, like, this is all we have. I mean, we don't have building plans yet, and we wouldn't expect those until the SIP phase.
And so these conditions about access from Tribeca Drive only, not Parmenter, is that already in the GIP?
I believe that when this site was rezoned for residential, which I think happened in 2019, that was a condition of the rezoning. And you can see that they are showing access to Tribeca on this drawing, and they also did on their last GIP amendment, because this was supposed to be a commercial property, but it got rezoned for apartments. And I believe that no access off of Parmenter was included as a condition the last time, and we're recommending that that remain a condition.
It's a little hard to see in this small screen, but building, what's labeled E there is the driveway or the parking that he's proposing, and that does seem to show a connection to Parmenter in that site plan.
It does, yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay. So we definitely want to include that as a condition again.
Abby, I think what it was last time was that you didn't have a development agreement with MIG at the time, and you guys were still kind of going around in circles over the width of that road, Tribeca, and we had no assurances that Tribeca would be done by the time we started or even completed construction. So I think last time it was, we were gonna have access on Parmenter until which time as Tribeca was complete. But it sounds like now you've got an actual development agreement with him that states something different. So all we cared about was being able to build, to be able to construct the site and have access during that time. So I don't think we're not opposed to that as long as, we get an understanding that road is required before we start construction.
And I guess connected to that, is the fire department okay with you having only access off of Tribeca Drive? Or would they want a emergency access potential off of Parmenter?
That's a great question. We can follow up with them and you could amend that to say pending, fire department approval of one access point. I think the reason why it is where it is and why we kind of set up the site the way we did to some degree is there's an existing curb cut there. So
on Parmenter.
Exactly. Where the driveway is shown right now, there's an existing curb cut. And so we weren't looking to add a curb cut. We were just saying, well, we kind of have a right to this one as it is now. If we have no certainty of when the Tribeca gets extended, we need to be able to get in and out of the place,
That's a very good point. And Abby, I don't know how you want to go about it, but it should be part of the approval.
So
It's okay with the fire department.
if there's
Yes,
already a
correct.
curb cut, presumably approved by engineering or public works, then I'm wondering why we even need to restrict access from Parmenter Street. Is it because it's a left turn in?
No, there's no median there. I don't know what the future plan is, but it's wide
We
open now.
had some conversations a year ago about restricting it to like a right in, right out or something like that, depending on what goes in on Parmenter. I think that was contingent on the developer agreement that's now kind of more fleshed out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Dan can speak to this from the Public Works Committee, but why even restrict it? It seems to me that.
Yeah, and I'm not on Public Works, so I wasn't privy to that conversation.
I think the goal when we reconstruct Parmenter Street north of Century Avenue is to try to limit access points as much as possible. We do have some funding now, and we're planning on starting, I think we're doing the plans in 2021, and then we're planning to do the reconstruction in 2022.
And from what I remember, there's a median in the center.
Of the new plan.
Yeah,
there's going to be a
yeah.
wide median. We're having bike lanes on both sides.
That's right.
And then a bike path on both sides too.
Yeah,
And
now it's
we-
all coming in clear again.
Yeah, and we actually approved it. So I think I guess we have approving so many things. So it can be. Yes, Jennifer, you're right. So it's that was a while ago. So I don't think. So what Abby and her team are saying, I think that does make sense. So yeah.
And one other question for Jacob. Are you going to be applying for the tax credits in the December round then?
They're due Friday, so we're not sleeping this week pretty much.
Okay.
I would make the motion to find that the GIP is consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the council contingent upon access from Tribeca Drive only and resolution of engineering staff comments.
And then approval by the fire department, and what was one other
I
thing?
think that's required for a
That's-
building permit anyway. That's just part of the building permit process or the site plan process.
So Abby, you had one more thing or not? Is that it?
Those were the only items that I had included in the staff comments. The only
Okay.
other potential issue was whether we wanted to include the requirement that they have something in their leases to prohibit parking on
Okay.
Canal Street.
Okay, all right. So you don't want to include that here then, or do you want to?
Not while it remains a contentious issue of private property owners. We don't want to get involved in that.
Okay, all right.
We can add that requirement later at the SIP stage if we have more information.
Okay. All right, need a second.
I'll second it, Murray.
Okay, so motion by Kurt Paulson, second by Jennifer Murray. So any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for recommending for general implementation plan amendment for Tribeca Village, Tribeca Drive, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. All right. We are on to item number 5. This is the review and recommendation for approval of the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. And I hear that Becky Binns is here from MSA Professional Services to make a presentation. Abby, you want to start?
I will turn it over to Becky. Daphne's gonna stop share and Becky's gonna pull up her screen. We also have our Public Lands Director, Matt Amundsen, on the call. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Becky.
Okay, Becky, it's all yours.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Good deal. My name is Becky Binns. I am a planner from MSA Professional Services, and I've been working with PRFC on the Corp for almost the past year, and also with staff with Matt. So tonight I just want to go through kind of highlights from the plan, hopefully 10 minutes or less. Feel free to stop me if you guys have questions as we go through the slides. So first, what is a corp? So this is a 5+ year plan that's going to guide the city's budget related to parkland acquisition, improvements to existing parks, new trails, improvements to existing trails. And the corp is often a requirement if you're going for state or federal funding. Usually the stewardship funding is what we think of. So it's an important plan to have in place. As far as what's actually in this 100+ page document, so we start off with kind of why the corp is important and the process we went through in developing the corp. We go through a little bit about Middleton, the existing parks, private and public, what population demographics look like right now, what land use looks like right now, and what those things might look like in the future, and how those are going to influence what our parks look like and how much acreage we need. Next section, goals and strategies, just to guide what's important to the city as far as parks and what they're going to look like, what the city is going to prioritize. The next chapter is pretty meaty. So this is our analysis of needs and demands. This is where we did some mapping analysis, look at areas that are underserved by parks right now in the city, as far as acres, as far as different types of park amenities. We did a community survey to assess what resident needs were. We also held a public meeting with some activities to get some feedback as well. We did a focus group with youth sports groups and other sports organizations who are using fields and parks in Middleton to see what their needs were and what they had in mind for the future. We also, of course, talked with PRFC and got their and staff's input as well. It was what needs were. Next chapter, we have our recommendations for existing parks, new parks, existing trails, new trails, and recreation programming. And then finally, we have our implementation chapter, which is where we lay out our recommendations park by park And we also have budget numbers, and we've prioritized recommendations and outlined some different funding opportunities the city could go after to fund the recommendations. There's a few appendices. We have our survey summary. We have a discussion about how we classify different parks, and then just a selection of the maps we included in the plan. So now the next few slides are just highlights. So this is the recommended parks and trails. The recommended parks are the blue letters you're going to see. So these are areas that were underserved by parks currently or will be in the future, or maybe they're areas that we know parks are going to go in because of new development, or just areas where we think a park makes sense. The pink lines and pink dots, so the pink dots are intersection improvements and the lines are trail improvements or new trail connections. And those all have descriptions actually in the CORP document. So that was probably our most important map that came out of the CORP. The next thing is, so the level of service. So one of the policies that the city had in its previous CORP was providing a level of service of 15 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. And that was something that PRFC confirmed was still important. Having a high level of standard for parks in Middleton is something that draws people to Middleton, keeps people in Middleton, also draws and keeps businesses in Middleton. So we went with that policy going forward. Using that policy and taking the population projections we got from the city's comprehensive plan update, we did some math to determine whether we were at a surplus or deficit for park acreage based on that standard. Currently, there's a deficit of about 5 acres of parkland. If we're doing 15 acres per 1,000, if we look to the next 10 years, that's a deficit of about 44 acres. So this next slide is just showing, so these are all of the high priority improvements PRFC decided upon, outlined by park. So a number of these are already included in the CIP or in the playground improvement plan, and those are noted. These are improvements that the PRFC ideally would like to see completed in the next up to 3 years. This is $2.7 million plus in improvement, so it is quite high. Might need to be refined again, but these are the things that PRFC felt was important. So another thing we were tasked with in the CORP is reviewing use agreements. So the city has a bunch of use agreements with a lot of youth sports organizations in the community. And through these partnerships with these organizations, the city has been able to develop amenities in parks that it may not have been able to afford otherwise. So these are great partnerships to have. But one kind of downside of that is these agreements have precluded the city from actually using, for instance, its ball fields, because the sports organizations have almost exclusive rights to use those places. So that was an issue. So the city tasked us with looking at what can we do to open up some of these fields. So these are our fields. We want to be able to use them if we can. So a couple of main recommendations we had to get at that. The first was requiring all organizations to provide detailed reservations. This would be getting rid of any blanket reservations we have. So youth sports organizations are only booking what they actually need. And the angle we kind of talked about with PRFC for this initiative, these changes, is we want to partner with the city and the sports organizations to improve equity and access to youth sports programming. So that would be kind of the angle we would want to work towards, and hopefully, work with private organizations to get them on board with that. Another recommendation is to charge hourly rates, which the city is doing. So organizations are only paying for what they're using, and hopefully that's incentive to also only book what they need. And then the third recommendation is to look at other reservation systems, some that are a bit more complex, that might be easier for the city to use and also easier for these organizations to use. There are other systems where you can prioritize users and just if you do have blanket reservations, those can happen automatically. So just something to facilitate the user experience there. The next kind of challenge we were exploring was, so the city needs parkland, it's going to be growing, but the city doesn't have a lot of land left to develop new parks with. So what are we going to do? The city's experienced a lot of infill development and is also projected to continue experiencing infill development. So again, here we came up with 3 primary recommendations. The first one being to convert basically any unused space to parkland. If there is a need in an area, consider adding a playground or something small. I know at least one of the recommendations we have in the future parks map is one such space. It's an area that's underserved by parks. There's just a small leftover piece of parcel. It's maybe somewhere we consider a park. Another thought on that was to look at pieces of land that are for sale, maybe work something out with the owners to have the city temporarily use those for soccer games, and the city can maintain that. You don't really need to add a ton of amenities to that, but that's another open space that could be used. Another option along this recommendation was to look at businesses or organizations like churches who have just large green spaces, working out some kind of partnership there. So really just using any green space we can find to put a ball field in, even if it is temporarily. The second recommendation here was to create an on-site open space requirement for multifamily developments. So this is something that I've seen other communities do. And this requirement is often based on the number of people who are going to be living in a development. So a certain square footage of park space on site, depending on the number of people. And then also we're looking at who's going to be living in the development. So is it going to be families? Then maybe we suggest swing sets and playground equipment. Is it going to be seniors? Maybe we want to suggest something different for them. So that was the second one. The third recommendation is to look at existing parks. And when we're looking at existing parks, we're looking at mainly the Parmenter corridor and the University Ave corridor. So these are the areas based on what we were seeing in the comprehensive plan, the city is projected to experience infill development. So this is what we focused on in the Corp, but looking at these parks and kind of reimagining them, we're not just going to add new playground equipment or, pop in another pavilion, but really think about the park, maybe even go to a master plan, think about how you're providing space for people to play, spaces for people to eat, spaces for people to socialize. How are we going to get people to stay in parks? Just kind of reimagining how these parks are working to hopefully include a wider variety of people and just a greater number of people. And I think this is the last one. So we were also tasked with looking at, so we know we're going to need 40 acres of park land to meet needs over the next 10 years. We were also tasked with looking at what is it going to cost to develop that parkland. So the cost to acquire that parkland, the 40 acres, is approximately $5 million. And this parkland, again, so this is based on our standard of 15 acres per 1,000 residents. So this was between 2020 and 2030. We're going to need 40 acres. The chart said we're at a 44 acre deficit, if you remember, but the state statutes don't allow us to make up for current deficits. We have about a 4 to 5 acre current deficit. So that's why we're going with, we need 40 acres of parkland. So the cost we calculated to acquire those 40 acres is about $5 million. And then the cost to actually put amenities on that 40 acres is just under another $5 million. So these, as you know, are tied to the fee in lieu and park development fees that the city charges. So we did recalculate what a fee in lieu would look like if all new dwelling units were taking on the full burden of these costs. the 5 million of fee in lieu and the 5 million of park development fee. And you can see it's a really drastic change from what the current fee is. And PRFC does not expect this to actually be the change, but expects that these rates will be discounted. But their point was that we want the city to know we're going to need about 10 million in funding or 5 million in fee and about 40 acres of park to meet the needs of the residents we're expecting to see over the next 10 years. So please don't freak out. I'm sorry, the numbers are so big, but you are projected to see some really great population growth, and parks are really important to the city. So that was kind of the takeaway here. And what we wanted to really highlight in the corp was we're looking for $10 million for new parks wherever it comes from. We're not saying it needs to come from development fees, but if we want to maintain the standard, it needs to come from somewhere. So next steps. So hopefully recommendation for adoption tonight, and then ideally council adoption probably into 2021. Does anyone have any questions on the corp or on the process?
Okay, questions for Becky.
I just want to jump in quickly as the chair of PRFC and thank Becky for, it's been a phenomenal year working with her. And she has done incredible stuff. And this is a beautiful report. And she is really the power behind this. And so thank you very much, Becky. It's been a pleasure. I just also want to say those things with the fees. It was very strong, even though I'm not sure Becky was quite ready to do it. It was very important for us to assert what these fees would be. I mean, we're not making the decisions on money, but somebody has to know what it costs to do what we want to do. And so we were all very insistent on putting this fee structure in there for good or for bad. But so anyways, thank you again, Becky.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. And I did go through this report last night, and it is really very well done. It's a really excellent document. And I went through the appendixes as well. It's very detailed. I didn't know we had that many parks. A lot of neighborhood parks, I didn't know they existed. And I used to think we have only one community park, the Lakeview, and now I know that's not true. There are 4 of them. So, and then the special use parks. So I thought it was, even though we have lived here since 1982, so it was still very educational. So we do have lots of parks, so which is a good thing. So I like your concept of the pocket parks because as you said as well, the land in Middleton is limited. So we don't really have, it's not like Sun Prairie or Pittsburgh, you can just expand. So we are sort of landlocked. Other than, the Bishop Bay, that's it. So, well, of course, we have an agreement with the town of Springfield, but it is somewhat limiting. So very impressive report. I will have some questions which I will ask you later, but I'm going to give the others the opportunity to ask questions now. Please raise your hand and I will let me know who is ready to ask the question. So anybody with raised hands, Abby?
No.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I was trying to raise my hand, but I can't find the button.
Okay, all
Sorry.
right, go ahead without it. So we consider your hand raised.
Becky's gonna laugh at me. Hi, Becky, how are you?
Hi.
Just a minor comment, figure 2.8 on page 20. It's supposed to list the amenities. For some reason, it doesn't have boxes checked as to which park has which amenities, so.
All right,
That might just be a typo or something, but that's, otherwise it looks really good. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Commissioner Murray has her hand raised.
Okay, Jennifer, you're up.
Hi, Becky, and congratulations to the PRFC. This looks like a great plan. One question about it, I'm curious if you looked at any other types of parks in terms of like public open space, like things that we would consider maybe not a typical park, but maybe like the downtown green that we are thinking of developing and other components of parks in the city. How did the group think of those public spaces relative to this plan?
So that's one thing. So the public market is something we looked at as far as creating those highly inclusive parks. That was kind of what we kind of built around and talked about for the Parmenter corridor. So we did think about those, and I know, Abby, there were maybe a couple other developments that were including park space. So we took those into account as far as those were going to be providing something for residents. So we tried to do that.
I think we also looked at this as a sort of a futures document too, and that we're becoming aware of the need for space. So we have to be acutely present to the idea that we need to look and be creative. But we're sort of only hitting this realization that we've run out of space. And now's the time to think differently. So that was a lot of discussion. And I think, future discussions will bring towards those ideas, but it opened our eyes that we need to be thinking about these things.
And thinking about master planning parks too. That's something we talked about that Matt was really on board with, was before we make any major improvements to parks, we want to do a park master plan and really create a vision for what this could be, not just add things in kind of ad hoc.
Great, thank you.
So Abby, do you see anyone else raising hands?
I don't see any others.
Okay. Well, John, congratulations to you too and the PRFC for doing this excellent job. So, I have asked in the past, I try to look at detail in this report as well. But Becky, if you look at west of the belt line, you got all those 560 apartments begin with, and now you got a lot more. So where is the park, or where is the plan to put something over there? I mean, if we don't put in this, I know you had letter G or whatever there, which looked like maybe it's somewhere over there. We have a lot of people there, but south of the University Avenue or Highway 14 and west of the Beltline, there's nothing. What are you going to, what did you do? What can you tell us about it?
Sure. For university, we were really focused on expanding Lakeview and kind of imagining that was, because we thought we looked south of 14 and also thought about, if we're expanding parks and trying to bring more users in, we might be creating conflicts and tension with neighbors if we're bringing a lot of people into a neighborhood and making a park that isn't like a destination park right now, actually a destination. So Lakeview is kind of what we settled on. I know Highway 14 is kind of a big barrier, but we still felt that was probably the best bet there. And then as far as on the west side, so the best option there seemed to be like are you talking down by the Erdman property?
Well, if you look west of the Highway 1218 and south of the Highway 14, so you got those Galena apartments, and then you got the new apartments, you got all that Greenway station. There's not a single park anywhere. You even got those new brown apartments, and so you have almost, I don't exactly know, somewhere maybe 1,000 people there. I wouldn't be surprised. I know in the past, just the Galena apartments are over 500 apartments and condos. And then we had those Foundry apartments, which came up there just recent, well, 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago. And then you got the Brown apartments, which is also, I don't know, Abby probably would know also, but there's no park there, nothing, period.
Yeah.
So I hope you have something.
We've been trying to get creative on this topic, because I know this is something that the mayor is really passionate about, and Matt and I have talked about it a couple times as well. We even went as far as reaching out to the owners of the Galena apartments, because they have a big open common space in the middle of their buildings. And we surveyed them to find out how many kids lived in the apartments. And then we offered on a staff level to improve the green space with equipment, which we were going to recommend to the council that we would cover the cost of that, even though it would be private land. And the owners of the Galena buildings didn't want to include any equipment or anything because they were worried that it would create noise and that their residents would complain about the noise. So kind of going along the same lines of what you were saying, Becky. We've also looked at other options in that area. I know around South Pond, Penny Klein previously was looking at areas where we might be able to add some playground equipment that at least would be accessible by trail. Even if we couldn't create parking in that area, that might be an opportunity. But yeah, we are kind of we don't have really any land available unless if we want to create a full park, you know, a 3+ acre park that would have amenities and that would include parking. There's really not any land available unless we want to go out and purchase a site that would otherwise be a development site. So we're going to have to pay probably top dollar for it.
Yeah, it's probably not realistic.
I just add in to respond as well that Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, but the planning document identifies that as an underserved area and an area we need green space and need to establish. But I think Abby's hit on the challenge is land value and unwilling partners, at least to this point. So in 2017, we added a playground at Firefighters Memorial Park, which would be the community park that serves most of that neighborhood. It's not a perfect situation, but it's something we did to try and address this. And I think we've got to continue to look for opportunities. And as developers in that area are talking about projects, we've got to, you know, as staff and when they come through for plan review, work to try and identify and even the willingness of dedicating public land, even if it's smaller than 3 acres, to say this is going to be a playground. And I think that the other concern here is a private property owner may be concerned about playground equipment on their property. We'd like it to be public, especially if we're going to fund it, and identifying a way to keep it public property so that the recreational immunity applies and everyone's protected would be the best way to move forward. We just have to find that right opportunity.
Well, I also think on behalf of the committee too, we were aware of when we looked at those fees, that it's too easy, it seems, for a developer to just pay a bunch of money and walk away from the problem, and we can't use the money for anything because there's no places. So one of these suggestions that Becky had at the end about looking at when a developer makes a proposal, that trying to set it up so that there's a guarantee that that developer includes some park space in that development in some way is, I think, a direction we need to start looking more at, because there's no space to buy, and whether they pay the money or not, it doesn't help us out.
And John, you're absolutely right. From what I remember, Aline had told me that Galena apartment, they paid at that time $272,000 for that whole thing. Imagine this, they got a great deal. and that money got used somewhere. And so anyway, I guess we have to be creative, even if we can think of some pocket park or some other small park there, just like on Hillcrest or something. I think, you know, the kids deserve to have a park, period. So as Abby can tell you, our boys, they probably go to park and they're all excited about it. So I think it's very important for the kids to have park when they grow up. I have a question that's on, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing about Matt too. I want to thank Matt, because along with Becky, he has been incredible in the job he does. And it's been a pleasure to work with this man and work with his vision. And it's really easy to run this committee with people like this working for you. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, John. Boy, so I'm not the only one to think that way. So that's good. So I do have a question. If you go to Becky, I don't expect you to remember, on page 32, there's a recommendation number 5, that it's Bike, Ped, and Transit Committee, which will find the funding. The committee will find the funding and run the trails or whatever that is. I don't have the exact wording. That's the advisory committee. So I think, the committees don't do that. So anyway, look into that one, so it should be fixed. So the other is, we had a discussion, Mike Davis and I, that, in all the cities, I contacted the cities, he contacted his friendly towns and villages. So just about everywhere the trails are built and maintained by the public works. So I think they have the engineering background and they know what they're doing. So and anyway, that's not to say that what Matt has done at the Lakeview Park is phenomenal. It's really impressive. So look at this page 32, recommended number 5, advisory committees don't really go into the fundings and stuff. So I think at some stage that's going to have to go to the public works, not an advisory committee. So any other questions or comments?
Commissioner Paulson has his hand raised.
I finally figured out how to raise my hand. I'm on a different,
Wow.
I'm normally on the
look at-
iPad, but now I'm stuck on my laptop.
Look at that, you're flying
just to
over
put a-
the,
just to put a-
the Lake Monona or Lake Mendota or whatever.
Just to put a bug in the ear of the committee and Matt and Abby. West of Pleasant View Road, the quarry. Long-term, at some point in time, I imagine they are going to cease operation and restore that in a reclamation. And that would be a good area to look at for parks, because parks are generally good as a way to reclaim quarry land. And that would be kind of a regional serving park that would cover a lot of that western area. I don't know what the plan is for when that might be annexed into the city.
Well, I talked to the owner. He says he's going to pass on to his children. And well, it was about a year ago, and he said we have no plans to stop it. So, but you never can tell. Plans change. So that's an excellent idea, Kurt. So I like this. Further questions or comments? Okay. So if there are no further questions or comments, this is the recommendation for approval for Corp. So need a motion.
I think John Schaefer should do the motion.
Yes,
Make the
John.
motion. I'll make the motion.
Yes, let's John have the honor. And looks like Jennifer right next to him is ready to do the second, right?
I'll second, sure. Yep.
Okay. Okay, now further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, if there are no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion for the recommendation for approval of the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Well, again, thank you, Becky, and thank you, Matt. Great job. As I sent a note to Matt, I was very impressed. And all this happened just in less than a year, I think 7 to 8 months. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. We move on to the next item, which is, wow, for the Seco Food. This item number 6. Specific implementation plan modification, sign design review for Seco Foods, 1845 Deming Way. Daphne.
Yeah, so this is for Seco Foods. They're proposing 2 new signs. One of them on the south side is replacing the existing one. And then the new one on the west elevation is going on that new addition that was recently built. And so going down here, they provided the measurements for the signs as well. So this new one on the west elevation is about 120 square feet. And then this one is about 110 square feet. And they've also provided an inventory of their existing signage here, which you can see the south one that's being replaced. It's quite a bit smaller. or the existing one is quite a bit smaller. And according to our sign ordinance, about the largest sign allowed on a building is generally about 100 square feet. And since this is in an SIP, they are given a bit more leeway. But we just thought that a lot of the signs were too large for what is already there.
Okay.
Can you
So-
clarify, Daphne, the north elevation sign that you're showing now is going to remain?
Yes, the north one that's on that
Right, where your
older
cursor is.
edition.
It's the
Yeah.
eastern building on the north side of the easternmost building.
Yeah.
Which was the
Yeah.
original building, yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
that is 155 square feet, which is more than the sign code allows. Did we grant a SIP modification for that? Do you know?
I'm not sure. It might have been in the original plans, but I didn't see anything in our files of another SIP modification for this one.
I know the Plan Commission reviewed the signage for their recent addition. So not the really recent addition, but the building that was constructed, I think, in 2019.
Right.
The Plan Commission reviewed and approved that signage as an SIP modification. And we have gotten complaints about the sign in particular that faces the pond on the south side of the building, that the letters are too large and that the sign is too large. I was just trying to read the height, and it looks like it's 5 feet 7 inches tall for those letters. And then the sign that they're proposing on the south side is even larger, but it says the full business name, Seiko Foods, and not just Seiko.
The,
Okay. Mhm.
I mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
the question becomes, you know, it's an industrial building. It doesn't have a lot of customers, right?
There's
So they
no
don't- they-
retail at all.
Right, so why do you need that much signage if it's, yeah, and I'm really curious as to why would they already have a sign that exceeds, and if we granted a variance or not. I mean, at some level, this does raise this question we need to come back to in our comprehensive plan, which is how do we deal with signs in PDDs, because we want to apply consistent and fair standards, and we don't want to have to review everything other than just the design. Is this really design review, or is this in essence a sign variance since it's exceeding the standards? That's where I'm a little confused.
Well, actually, staff is asking to reduce the size so that it is about 100 feet in size, 100 square feet. I mean,
If
that's
they,
what the
if
staff
they already have
recommendation-
one that's 155 square feet for the building, I mean, I'd have to see the whole building as a whole, but you want the signage to be approximately the same. Right? So there's some consistency across the building.
And Kurt, to your question, the sign ordinance, it is pretty outdated. I think it was written before I came to the city, so it's probably more than 13 years old now. And it allows PDDs to have flexibility without going through the sign variance process. But I would tend to agree with you that might be something we would want to look at when we're modifying ordinances, because PDDs are intended to allow flexibility in land use, but I'm not really sure why we would change our standards for commercial signage just because a property is zoned PDD.
So,
right. But the neighborhood is different because it is industrial. It's not adjoining a commercial, but I'm just confused and concerned, but I'll stop.
Well,
okay, do we have somebody from Seiko Foods here? Do we have someone from Seiko Foods?
I have one more question, Abby, about the signage on multiple facades. I know this has come up a few times. If this were not in the PDD, what would be guiding which facade that would have a sign?
We would only allow a wall sign on the facades that face a street. So they would only be allowed a sign on the west side and on the north side. They wouldn't have been allowed that sign that faces the pond at all.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so what's up now? So that the pond side sign is already there and it's staying from what I understand. So we are only considering the sign on the west and the north then, right?
They are asking to change the sign on the south side, on the pond side.
Okay, so then it would have to be smaller then, right? Okay, so what is that which you would like the commission to do? What is which you're asking, Abby?
I think we would like for them to get their signage into compliance with the 100 square foot maximum. I'm not really sure what to do about the south side because that's already been approved, but I don't think we would want to allow anything larger than what is there now. Commissioner Schaefer has his hand raised.
John? Yeah, you are muted, John.
I think I accidentally muted you, John. I'm so sorry. I was trying to lower your hand and I think I muted you.
Okay. Sorry, they're asking for 2 signs on the south side. As I read the plans correctly, one on the western building and one on the eastern building, both facing south.
The one on that original south one is going to be taken off, and then they're replacing it with this one right here.
Just the little one over the office. Okay.
Yeah.
Daphne, can you zoom in on that south elevation and read what the height of those letters is that they're proposing? Yeah, so those letters, I mean, granted, they have a capital F now and a capital D, so those are taller, but those letters are even taller than the letters that are currently on the south wall. So they were 5'7" before for the lower, like the Seiko portion, and now they're 6'2". And then with the F and the D being taller now, those are 8 foot 11-inch letters. I think that might be taller than what Costco has on their building. That's a very large sign.
So do you want to work with them before you bring it back, or do you want to do something here now? It looks like they got a lot of issues here.
We did email with them and express our concerns over a series of emails. But I don't think that Daphne, they didn't offer to reduce their signage or anything like that in the emails that we were.
No, yeah, when they first submitted this, so they submitted it like about 3 weeks ago. We did reach out to them. I reached out, Abby also reached out to talk about our concerns with this, but they didn't give any hint of wanting to downsize any of their signs.
Okay, so let's hear.
I'm uncomfortable approving this right now, given that we have a couple of procedural and conflicting issues, and there's no one here from the company to explain. I mean, if that south elevation, if they don't need that sign, and that's the one people complain about.
Well, let's make a motion to defer this and allow staff to talk with them about our concerns.
Yeah.
And the sign package and come back with us. So I'll make a motion to defer this then.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mayor, Commissioner Murray has her hand raised.
Hi, Jennifer. Yes.
I'm wondering, so right now, I just want to make sure I'm clear. There's a sign on the south side and on the north side?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what they're proposing is really to have 3 facades have signs on them. I have 3 signs. Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing I think that we could discuss with them, or maybe should be, is if they were to pick two facades, which facades they would want signs on.
Okay. More ideas.
Well, if
Okay, so
they
the
don't need
motion-
to, if they don't need to, let me back out of that sentence. They have a sign in the south side, which we think is not what they need. So before we grant them something else, we'd want them to consider taking that one down. Right? They only need two signs because they only have two streets that they front, correct?
Correct.
So I can't see us approving any more than two signs. I like
Okay.
Jen's question, which is which two signs do you want?
Mhm.
I
Okay,
think
so yeah, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one could argue that the south side, the main purpose of the south side sign is for catching Beltline traffic. And I think they see that as a visible point, because it's the only way you can see that. If you're coming out of the up, towards Costco, you don't see that sign over there, but from the Beltline, you see it. And that may be what they're trying to do on the south side. But
Okay,
again,
well, the motion is to defer, and the staff will work with them to come up with some acceptable proposal. Any further question or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to defer and the staff to work with the Seco Food, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion is unanimous. All right. Item number 7. So this is design review revisions, Milton Cross Plain Area School District, 2100 Bristol Street. Abby.
Yeah, so this is a minor modification to the approved plans for the high school. It's a 2,900 square foot addition on the southeast side of the building along Bristol Street. It complies with the zoning for the property. It does not affect parking or any of the drives. And they have relocated the landscaping to make sure that they're still meeting the points requirement. Our recommendation is for approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments.
Okay, questions or comments? They had so much paperwork there, I didn't know what they were asking for. So I did spend a lot of time trying to understand it, but there was just, I wish there was only what was, what one needed to know, but that's how it is, so.
Yeah, it's a pretty minor change. I should also mention that Sarah Church from Veerbecker is on the line, as well as Bill Eberhardt from the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District.
Okay, Sarah and Bill, do you want to add anything? Or what do you want to say?
I think Chris from EUA is on as well. He may want to speak first.
Okay.
Chris, are you on?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I am. I'm Chris Michaud with EUA, Epstein Union Architects, the design firm working with the school district on this. Yeah, I think it was summarized exactly. It's a small addition that the school district has decided to put onto this project to provide some additional space for some of the programming inside the building. And I don't know what other explanations, if you want us to go through anything or if you have any questions on that. And I don't know if you had any publicly or any engineering comments that you want to discuss now, or Sarah, you can talk to those.
And Chris, let me jump in. This is Bill Eberhardt. So years ago, back when Tom Wallaber was on the was with the school district, we had discussed possibly putting some gym storage off of that small gym. So our small gym is in that corner. And of course, we're equipment-wise, we are struggling with places to put equipment. And with the new addition, we actually lost some space. So I brought this up again. And then we decided that if we could wrap it around that south side of the building as well, if you were thinking about where it would go, where the flags are currently and where the Middleton School neon sign is, that would be the south wall and then the east. So it won't go any further east than the current entryway that goes into that small gym. There's 5 doors there, and then it'll wrap around. So it's basically only for storage, and it will store gymnastics equipment, matting, springboards, things like that. And we wanted to put a drying room for football equipment and any stinky equipment, then to keep it out of the locker room. So that's not an issue because it is currently. So we're trying to add some more storage, and we thought that would be a good use for that area through there. So that gives the background.
It's a good timing. So, before it's too late, it's, yeah, I guess it's adding a storage facility which somehow fell through the cracks. So anybody else want to add anything else? Okay, otherwise.
Move approval of design review contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations.
Okay, I will go ahead and second it. And any further questions or comments? So Bill and Sarah and others, this is the best site that you can think of putting this area, I guess, right next to the gym. I think that's where it belongs. Any other? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to approve the design review revisions for the Milton Craftsman Area School District 21 on Bristol Street. And this is essentially adding 1-story, 2,100 square foot of addition to the southeast corner of the Poole High School expansion area, and mainly for storage. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, guys, our school is doing great. And when I talk to people, they come to Middleton because, well, number one reason always the schools, and then there are some other reasons. So I think let's keep it the best possible school in the whole state. Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great job. Thank you what you're doing. So I appreciate that. And let us know if there's anything else that you guys need. So we are here to help you.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Okay, item number 8. So this is Abby, staff update on draft City of Middleton comprehensive plan. All right, Abby, go ahead.
It's pretty quick update. The Common Council set the public hearing, or agreed with the Plan Commission that we should set the public hearing for Tuesday the 12th at 7. We do have 3 other public hearings now that are scheduled that evening, as well as probably quite a few agenda items. So just be ready with your caffeine on January 12th. We are advertising the public hearing in the Middleton Times Tribune 3 times. We've sent them the public hearing notice. We have it on our website. We've sent it out on Notify Me. We posted it on Facebook twice. It was also shared by the Middleton Review, and we're hoping more people will share it and help us get the word out about the hearing. We'll continue to promote it on social media. That is all I had.
And folks, tell your neighbors and friends or anybody you run into, comprehensive plan hearing on January 12th. I think it's more the better. We need as much input as we can have. Can't go wrong there. So this is just the information, Abby. So any questions for Abby?
Abby, is the plan on January 12th that we would entertain a motion to adopt or recommend adoption of the plan, or then do that at a later meeting after we kind of synthesize public comments?
I suppose it depends on what we hear during the hearing and what your comfort level is. If we get a lot of comments during the hearing for changes that we should be making, then I would think we would want to wait.
Yeah, I think it usually is a good idea after the public hearing. If you have to wait. It's not, we spent 5 years on this one. So I know for the budget, there was a time we have a public hearing and approve at the same time, and people said, what is going on here? So we stopped that. And so Here
the-
is the very big document, so I think, well, anyway.
So the
there's
goal
no
is then
public comment,
that
so-
we would finalize and recommend approval in the last meeting of January, and hopefully then council will take it up in February, and we'll be done.
Yep, I don't
And
see
then
any problem.
And
they'll
then we
have
can
to do
start
their-
working on the 2030 version.
Yeah.
That's a joke, sorry.
We have to have one more public hearing, right? Before the,
Yes,
For the-
yep.
For the city
Um,
council, yes.
The public participation plan that was approved by the city called for 2 hearings after the full draft is prepared. One of which would require a 30-day notice. So the one that has a 30-day notice is the one on January 12th. And then we can hold another public hearing at the council that doesn't have a 30-day notice, but I think we would want to give some notice, maybe a couple weeks notice to people.
Make it like a class 2 notice since it's an
Yes.
ordinance.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, let's
Yep.
hope we have a lot of people show up on 12th or at Zoom, so. Any other questions or comments or anything which you want to say at this time? Otherwise, we need a motion to adjourn.
Move adjournment.
Okay, and Jennifer, you want to second it, it looks like it, right?
I can second it.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Anyone opposed? So we are adjourned. Go out and have drinks or dinner or whatever you want to do now, so. Thank
Nobody's
you.
going
Holidays.
anywhere.
Stay home and have drinks.
Yeah, Sam.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone.
bye, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.
This is the last meeting of 2020. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and good of everything to your family. Stay away from this pandemic thing, and the vaccine is coming around the corner. So.